The jungle was heavy with silence, the kind that presses against your chest and makes every breath feel like it's echoing through a cathedral of trees. The muddy river carved through the heart of the wilderness like a restless serpent, its current fast and unforgiving. From the distance, the low rumble of a storm rolled over the treetops. Through the swirling waters, a powerful figure surged forward. Rex, a German shepherd with eyes sharp as steel and the word police stamped across his vest. His chest cut through the river like a blade, each stroke a race against time. On the surface of the water, a red plastic basket bobbed violently, threatening to capsize with every wave. Inside, something small shifted, whimpering softly. No human was in sight. Rex swam harder, pushing against the current, his instincts screaming. He didn't need a command. His mission was clear. What he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the rescue wouldn't be as simple as retrieving a helpless creature from a river. Something ancient was watching, something wild. High on a tangle of fallen logs, Nyra, a full-grown jaguar, stood poised, her golden eyes locked on the scene below. Her muscles were tight, but she didn't move. Beside her, 2 cubs, Xylo and Minka, peeked from behind a thick root, their small eyes wide with curiosity and tension. Nyra didn't snarl. She didn't growl. She simply watched as the police dog approached her domain. To her, this was not just a stranger. It was a threat, or maybe something else entirely. Meanwhile, from a clearing further upriver, Detective Hank Mercer stood frozen at the riverbank, binoculars raised. "Rex is too far ahead," he muttered into his radio. "Something's off down there." In his 20 years on the force, Hank had learned to trust Rex more than most people, but even he felt the weight of something strange in the air. The jungle wasn't just alive, it was aware, and whatever was waiting for them on the other side of that water, it wasn't part of the plan. Back in the water, Rex reached the basket. Carefully, he bit down on the rim and began towing it toward the edge, his muscles burning. But before he could reach safety, a sound like a low growl vibrated through the air. Not aggressive, not welcoming, just present. Rex paused. His ears flicked. From the shadows ahead, a massive shape stepped forward onto the log, Nyra. She was close now, too close. Their eyes met. For a moment, everything stopped. The jungle, the river, even time itself seemed to hold its breath. Rex held the basket steady, never breaking gaze. Nyra did the same. 2 protectors, 2 worlds colliding in the silence. And in that suspended moment, it became clear this was not a rescue mission anymore. This was a standoff between instinct and purpose. And what came next would change everything. Rex didn't flinch. The basket bumped against his chest as the current tried to tug it from his grip, but his eyes never left Nyra's. Her powerful body was still, yet every fiber of her being radiated tension. She stood tall on the log, the cubs tucked safely behind her legs. Her gaze wasn't filled with rage. It was layered with something else. Recognition, caution, maybe even curiosity. In that thick air between predator and protector, something unspoken passed. A truce not declared, but understood. From the tree line above, Dr. Camille Rhodes crouched low behind a bush, binoculars pressed to her face. "Oh my God," she whispered into her headset. "It's a jaguar, and she has cubs." Camille's pulse raced. She'd spent years studying big cats, but never this close. Never like this. She recognized Nyra immediately, the elusive female she tracked for months. The one with the unusually calm demeanor around human settlements. "She's not attacking," Camille said, almost in disbelief. "She's watching him." Rex began swimming again, this time slower. He kept the basket close and his head low, making himself smaller. The jaguar didn't move. Not a twitch. She simply tracked him with her eyes, as if calculating every breath he took. Xylo peeked out from behind her, tilting his head at the strange creature paddling through their river. Minka mewed softly, and Nyra turned briefly, her body language protective but still calm. Whatever was in that basket, it wasn't just important to Rex. Nyra had sensed it too. On the other side of the river, Deputy Lacey Thorne and Sheriff Roy Callahan arrived in a pickup truck, tires crunching over the wet ground. Lacey jumped out first, eyes wide as she took in the scene. "What is Rex doing out there? Is that a jaguar?" she shouted, reaching for her radio. Sheriff Callahan didn't answer immediately. He narrowed his eyes, trying to read the situation. "Nobody move," he said, voice low. "That cat could strike in seconds, but she hasn't. There's something going on here." The rain finally began to fall, light at first, then steadily drumming over the leaves and water. Rex reached the shallows, his body aching, the basket still firm in his jaws. Camille stepped forward cautiously, arms out, eyes on Nyra. "Easy, girl," she murmured, speaking as if Nyra could understand. And maybe she did, because instead of following Rex, Nyra turned back toward the forest, nudging her cubs ahead of her. One last look over her shoulder, and she was gone. Rex dropped the basket gently at Camille's feet. Inside, wrapped in soaked towels, was a baby monkey, tiny, trembling, and barely breathing. "How did this even get here?" Lacey asked, voice cracking. Camille didn't answer. Her eyes were fixed on the trail Nyra had vanished into. There were no words to explain what had just happened. But one thing was clear. This jungle had rules, and that day, a jaguar and a police dog had rewritten them together. The baby monkey lay curled inside a thermal blanket, its small chest rising and falling with shallow breaths. Camille's hands worked quickly, checking for injuries, warming the fragile body with a portable heat pack. "Dehydrated, mild hypothermia," she muttered, her voice focused, yet clearly shaken. "But he's alive." Rex sat nearby, soaked to the bone, his eyes flicking between Camille and the trees where Nyra had disappeared. He was alert, not to danger, but to a presence he could still feel watching. From the safety of a nearby boulder, Xylo and Minka peeked once again through the foliage. Nyra had not gone far. She crouched behind the cover of trees, her body low but still. She watched in silence, not to stalk or strike, but to understand. The scent of her cubs lingered near the humans, and something primal rooted her to the spot. Rex looked up, and even without seeing her, he knew she hadn't truly left. His ears perked toward the brush, his posture calm. No threat, just connection. Detective Hank Mercer approached carefully, stepping beside Camille with a mix of awe and confusion etched across his face. "So let me get this straight," he said, lowering his voice. "Our K9 jumps into a river to rescue a monkey. A jaguar watches him do it without making a move. And now she's just..." He gestured toward the woods. "Hanging around?" Camille nodded slowly. "She's not just any jaguar. I've studied her for almost 2 years. Nyra isn't like the others. She's different, smarter. She doesn't act out of aggression, only necessity." Lacey stood nearby, scanning the treetops as the rain misted down. "Sheriff," she called, "I think this monkey was being moved, maybe trafficked." She pointed to a tag loosely attached to the baby's ankle. A small, numbered band, the kind often used by black market animal smugglers. Sheriff Callahan's expression darkened. "So what? They tossed it in the river when they heard us coming?" he asked. No one answered, but the silence said enough. The forest was hiding more than predators. It was hiding crimes. Back in the forest shadows, Nyra turned away at last, guiding her cubs deeper into the underbrush. Her paw steps were silent, her presence fading with the mist. She had seen enough. The humans, the dog, they were not enemies. Not today. Something had changed in the air, something that transcended species. For reasons no one could explain, she had allowed Rex to pass. And somehow, Rex had understood her permission. They had spoken without words, drawn by the same instinct, to protect the innocent. As the rain grew steadier, Camille wrapped the monkey tighter and stood. "We need to get him to the sanctuary. Now." She looked at Rex, who didn't move, still staring into the trees. "Come on, boy," Hank said softly, placing a hand on his head, but Rex hesitated. he could still feel something unfinished. A thread between him and the jungle that hadn't quite let go. Something was coming, and whatever it was, it hadn't yet shown its face. By morning, the rain had stopped, but the jungle remained soaked in silence. Mist clung low to the ground, curling around trees and covering the forest floor like a blanket of secrets. Camille stood beside the small mobile clinic set up near the river, watching over the baby monkey as it rested in a heated crate. Its breathing had steadied overnight, but it still hadn't opened its eyes. "He's been through hell," she whispered, brushing a damp strand of hair from her face. Nearby, Rex lay on a tarp, still alert, ears twitching with every sound from the trees. Detective Hank Mercer returned from a short patrol, mud clinging to his boots. "Found tire tracks," he said, voice grim. "Old ones, but deep, leading from the old logging road straight to the riverbank." He tossed a folded map onto the table. "And get this, we're not the only ones looking for that monkey. I found broken crates in the brush, marked with wildlife transport stickers. Someone's been using this part of the jungle to smuggle animals." Camille's jaw clenched. "That explains the ankle tag. But why dump it in the river?" Lacey arrived seconds later, holding a small camera she had found half buried in the mud. "Trail cam. Battery's still alive," she said, wiping the lens clean. Hank plugged it into his laptop and clicked through the footage. Most of it was standard jungle life: birds, capybaras, the occasional ocelot. Then, at exactly 2:13 a.m., headlights cut through the darkness. A van pulled up near the river. Two men stepped out. One of them held a small animal wrapped in cloth. They shouted something, glanced around, then tossed the bundle into the current. Camille gasped. "That's him." They threw him in like garbage. Her eyes burned with fury. And Nyra was probably watching. That's why she didn't attack Rex. She knew he was saving him. Hank leaned in. "Wait. Look at the timestamp. That's less than 10 minutes before Rex got to the water." The pieces were falling into place, but one question remained. Who were the men? And why risk dumping the animal here, knowing the area was patrolled by both law enforcement and wild predators? As the sun broke through the canopy, Rex suddenly stood, nose in the air, his muscles tensed. Something was approaching, not a threat but not familiar either. Within seconds, footsteps echoed through the trees, fast and deliberate. A figure appeared. Blake Tanner, helicopter pilot and survival specialist. He was covered in sweat and scratches, breathing hard. "We've got a problem," he said, pulling off his gear. Two more crates found deeper upriver. Empty, but claw marks everywhere. Whatever was in them, it got out. Everyone exchanged tense looks. Camille stepped forward. "What kind of animals are we talking about?" Blake looked at her, his expression serious. "Not monkeys. Something bigger, stronger." He turned toward Rex. "And if that jaguar's still close, she might not be the only one watching us anymore." The jungle had gone quiet again, too quiet. And somewhere out there, something had just been set loose. The canopy above rustled faintly, but no wind moved through the trees. Camille felt the tension settle over the team like a fog. Everyone stood still, as if the forest itself were holding its breath. "What do you mean something got out?" she asked, her voice low. Blake Tanner stepped forward, his face grim and voice firm. The crates were reinforced steel. Something clawed straight through them. "I've seen big cats do damage, but this wasn't from a jaguar. It looked like it came from two different animals. Big ones." Detective Mercer studied the claw marks in the photos Blake had brought. "Could this be a hybrid smuggling ring?" he asked. "People breed exotic animals illegally. Lions with tigers, jaguars with leopards. Sell them to private collectors. Maybe one of those crossbreeds broke loose." Camille shook her head. "If that's true, we're not dealing with ordinary predators. They're stronger, more unstable, and not afraid of humans." She looked over at Rex, who was pacing now, his ears twitching. He could sense it. Something had entered his world that didn't belong. Down the trail, Lacey and Blake retraced his steps to the broken crates. The deeper they moved into the forest, the more unnatural it felt. Birds were silent. Even the insects had quieted. Lacey knelt beside a crushed fern. Something heavy moved through here. Recently, she spotted what looked like blood on a nearby tree, smeared high, at least 6 feet off the ground. "This wasn't from the monkey," she whispered. Blake raised his weapon slightly. "Whatever it is, it's not scared." Back at the mobile site, Camille kept an eye on the baby monkey, who now stirred weakly, his fingers curling slightly around a blanket. She reached inside the crate and gently touched his head. "You were never meant to be here, were you?" she murmured. Her thoughts drifted back to Nyra and the moment of mutual understanding in the river. The jaguar hadn't just spared Rex. She'd chosen to trust him. That meant something. And if Nyra was still watching, she might be tracking the same thing they were. Suddenly, Rex growled low, rising to all fours. Everyone froze. From the edge of the tree line, leaves rustled. Not fast, not aggressive, but steady. Camille turned slowly. Emerging from the shadows was Nyra, her body tense, but not threatening. She stepped forward, alone this time, her golden eyes fixed not on the humans, but on the trees behind them. She paused, then let out a low, guttural growl, a warning. She turned her head briefly, then back toward the forest, as if signaling. "She's not here to attack," Camille whispered. "She's tracking them. Whatever escaped. She knows where it went." Rex stepped forward beside Nyra, their bodies aligned. 2 protectors, different species, same mission. And in that moment it became clear, the jungle wasn't just their battleground. It was their shared territory now, and something dangerous had crossed the line. The jungle closed in like a trap. Camille, Rex, Blake, and Detective Mercer followed Nyra cautiously as she moved ahead, silent as a shadow. The leaves glistened with leftover rain, the forest thick with humidity and tension. Rex stayed close to her flank, his movements mirroring hers, as if they had trained together for years. Every few yards, Nyra would stop, sniff the air, then continue with sharper focus. Her body language said everything. They weren't alone, and the threat was near. Blake scanned the area through his infrared scope. "I'm picking up body heat, maybe 50 yards to the east. Something big, and it's not moving." Mercer drew his sidearm, his finger tight on the trigger. "Is it watching us?" he asked. Blake didn't answer at first. He adjusted the scope again, then nodded. "Yeah, it is." Camille glanced toward Nyra. The jaguar had stopped. Her ears perked, her tail low. She crouched slightly, not in fear, in readiness. Something about her stance made Camille's blood run cold. Whatever was ahead wasn't afraid of them either. The group came upon a clearing where the jungle opened briefly to reveal one of the broken crates. Twisted metal, clawed and bent from the inside. A dark fluid pooled beneath it. Blood. But it wasn't fresh. Camille knelt beside it, examining the marks. "This wasn't just escape," she murmured. "This was rage." Bits of torn mesh fencing hung from nearby trees. Something had charged through this area in a frenzy, and judging by the deep gouges in the bark, it hadn't stopped for anything. Rex growled again, low warning. At the same moment, Nyra's ears flattened. She looked toward the upper branches. Blake followed her gaze and spotted it. 2 glowing eyes reflecting back from a high perch. Then another set, and another. "We've got movement above," he said, raising his weapon. Before he could fire, a shriek cut through the trees, wild and guttural. From the canopy, a creature leaped, not fully feline, not fully primate. Its movements were erratic, muscular, and filled with unnatural speed. It landed and vanished into the brush in a blur. Camille's breath caught. That's not a natural species. That's been bred. The realization hit her hard. Someone's creating these animals, hybrids. Mercer stepped forward, stunned. But why? For trafficking? Or something worse? No one had answers. Nyra suddenly bolted, taking off in the direction the creature had gone. Without hesitation, Rex followed her, barking sharply. The bond they had formed was now an alliance, instinct fused with purpose. Blake shouted after them, "Rex, come back!" But they were already gone, disappearing into the undergrowth. Camille turned to Mercer, her voice tight. "We have to follow them. Now." Mercer nodded, already moving. The jungle ahead was darker, denser, but they had no choice. The predators they thought they understood were no longer the only hunters. And as they stepped deeper into the unknown, they realized the real danger wasn't just what had escaped, but who had set it free. The deeper they moved into the forest, the more distorted everything felt. The air was thick, not just with humidity but with dread, like something unnatural had rooted itself in the soil. Camille pressed forward with Blake and Detective Mercer close behind, machetes in hand to clear the overgrown path. "How far ahead are they?" Blake asked, panting from the climb. Camille shook her head. "Rex is fast, but Nyra knows this terrain. If anyone can keep up with that creature, it's them." Suddenly, a low snarl echoed from the right, followed by a violent crash of branches. Everyone froze. Mercer raised his weapon, scanning the shadows. "That wasn't Nyra," he said sharply. Camille felt her heartbeat spike. No, and it wasn't alone. From the corner of her eye, she saw movement, quick, low to the ground, but too large to be any ordinary predator. Whatever these hybrids were, they weren't designed to hide. They were built to stalk, to test, and to strike. And they were toying with them. Meanwhile, Rex chased Nyra through a winding path of roots and fallen trees, his lungs burning, but his focus locked on the trail. Nyra moved with absolute precision, her body low and agile. She was no longer cautious, she was in pursuit. They weren't just tracking anymore. They were closing in. The scent was fresh, the claw marks deep and wild. Then, in a clearing ahead, they saw it. The hybrid beast, crouched over something, feeding. Its back was arched, fur patchy, muscles twitching under skin too tight for its frame. Rex growled, a deep, resonant sound that made the creature freeze. It turned, revealing wide, reflective eyes and elongated limbs. A twisted fusion of feline and primate with too many teeth for either. Nyra snarled, stepping forward, her shoulders rolling with purpose. The creature hissed and bolted, crashing through the trees. Nyra gave chase, and Rex followed without hesitation. They disappeared into a dark ravine, the forest swallowing their sounds. Above, unseen by them, another pair of glowing eyes tracked their every move from the trees. Back with Camille's group, the forest suddenly erupted with noise. Snarls, screams, and then silence. "They've found it," Camille said, her voice tight with urgency. "Or it found them." Blake pushed forward faster, ignoring the scratches from vines and thorns. Mercer kept his weapon ready, scanning every shadow. The deeper they went, the more signs of destruction appeared. Clawed trees, shattered branches, and animal remains strewn in unnatural patterns. This wasn't a hunting ground. It was a battlefield. Then they stumbled upon it, a wide gorge lined with claw marks and blood trails. Camille dropped to her knees, examining the signs. "They went down there," she said. "Rex and Nyra both." Blake looked into the darkness below. "If we follow, there's no going back until it's over." Mercer clicked on his flashlight. "Then we don't stop." Without another word, they descended into the ravine, unaware that the true terror was not what lay ahead, but what had been waiting for them all along. The ravine was steep and slick, carved by centuries of rainwater and erosion. Camille's boots slipped on the damp rock as she clung to vines and roots for balance, her breath coming in short bursts. Blake descended behind her, one hand on his sidearm, the other gripping a flashlight. The beam of light cut through the darkness like a blade, revealing thick moss, twisted tree roots, and the occasional smear of blood. "Watch your step," he whispered. "We're not alone down here." At the bottom, the terrain opened into a wide, hollow basin, a natural pit hidden beneath the jungle. The air was cooler here but heavier. Mercer crouched beside fresh paw prints in the mud. Nyra, he confirmed, pointing to another set beside them. And Rex, they passed through recently. Camille knelt to inspect the tracks. No blood, she said softly. They're still moving. But before they could press forward, a distant roar vibrated through the ravine walls. It wasn't a normal growl, it was distorted, tortured, and close. Meanwhile, deeper within the pit, Rex and Nyra slowed their pace. The terrain had changed. The ground was soft, damp, and littered with bones. Nyra's ears were pinned back, her eyes darting around the cavern-like space. The scent of decay was overwhelming. In the shadows ahead, the hybrid creature moved, slower now, limping. It was injured. Rex stepped beside Nyra, sensing the same thing. Whatever had been created here was breaking down. It wasn't meant to survive in the wild, it was unstable, violent, and dying. Then came the second roar. From the far end of the pit, a new figure emerged, larger, heavier, and even more malformed. It moved like a jaguar but had a primate's upper limbs and a terrifying, almost human scream. Camille's group arrived just in time to see it raise its head and charge toward Rex and Nyra. "No!" Camille shouted, sprinting into the open. Rex turned at her voice but didn't move. He braced, standing his ground. Nyra launched herself first, crashing into the creature with terrifying force. The sound of the impact echoed through the gorge. The two animals rolled violently, claws slashing, teeth bared. Blood sprayed across the rocks. Rex joined the fight, targeting the creature's exposed flank, biting down hard. The hybrid shrieked, thrashing wildly. Blake raised his rifle but hesitated. One wrong shot and he could hit either protector. "I don't have a clean shot," he yelled. Camille stepped forward, heart racing. "We need to draw it away," she shouted. Mercer fired a warning shot into the air. The noise startled the creature just long enough for Nyra to land a fatal blow. With one final roar, the hybrid collapsed, its body twitching before going still. The pit fell silent. Nyra stood over the corpse, her chest heaving, blood matting her fur. Rex stood beside her, still growling softly, eyes scanning the darkness for more threats. Camille slowly approached, trembling. "It's over," she whispered, but in her gut, she knew something about this wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something much darker, something man-made and far from finished. Morning sunlight barely pierced the dense canopy as the group emerged from the ravine, their bodies scratched, bruised, and exhausted. Camille held a bandage to Nyra's shoulder where the hybrid's claws had left deep gashes. Rex stayed close, his protective stance never wavering. Blake scanned the tree line, then pointed to the northwest. "We passed a ridge last night," he said. "I saw something up there, metal. Could be where this all started." Mercer nodded grimly. "Then that's where we're going. Time to find out who's behind this." The hike was steep and silent. The forest around them, once filled with birdsong and the hum of insects, was eerily quiet, as if nature itself was recoiling from whatever was hidden at the top of that ridge. When they finally reached it, the foliage thinned just enough to reveal a set of rusted steel gates, half buried in vines. Behind them stood a crumbling concrete structure, partially swallowed by the jungle. Camille stared in disbelief. "That's a lab," she muttered. "A private facility, no records, no markings. This wasn't supposed to exist." Inside, the facility was a maze of dark hallways, broken equipment, and shattered glass. Files were strewn across the floor, many charred or soaked from a past flood. Camille picked up a half-burned document. Her eyes scanned the words. Genetic hybrid trials, cross-species manipulation, Project Apex. She looked up, horrified. This was never just about trafficking. They were creating weapons, biological ones. Mercer opened a steel door and revealed several small, reinforced cages. One still had blood inside. Another had bones. A monitor in the corner flickered to life as Blake powered on the backup generator. A grainy security feed began to play, dated footage of scientists in lab coats injecting animals, running tests, documenting behavioral shifts. One clip showed the hybrid they had just fought, smaller, newly developed, but already aggressive. Then came another figure in the footage, a man in military gear overseeing the work. Camille stepped closer. "That's not a scientist. That's a handler," she said. "They weren't just creating, they were training them." Suddenly, from behind the lab, a sound echoed, the whine of an engine. A black SUV kicked up dust as it peeled away through a hidden back road, barely visible through the trees. "Someone's still out there," Blake said, already grabbing his gear. Mercer was close behind. "They saw the cameras activate. They know we're here." Camille turned to Rex and Nyra, both alert again. The fight wasn't over. The source hadn't been destroyed, only exposed. As the group raced back into the jungle, Camille looked over her shoulder one last time at the decaying facility. "They didn't just unleash something," she said, voice low. "They left the door wide open." Nyra and Rex led the way, side by side, no longer just allies, now guardians of something much bigger. And deep in the shadows ahead, the true architect of the nightmare waited, ready for the final move. The jungle burned gold under the setting sun as the team raced toward the back road, following the fresh tire tracks that cut through the soft earth. Camille's legs ached, but her mind was locked on one thing. They couldn't let whoever was behind this escape. Nyra darted ahead with Rex close behind, both moving with a shared sense of urgency, as if they too understood that this was the final moment. Every shadow felt alive, every sound a warning. The forest was closing in, not to hide them, but to reveal the truth. Blake's drone zipped above the trees, sending back a live feed. "There," he called out. "Half a mile east. They're heading to an extraction point. Looks like a chopper is already en route." Mercer cursed under his breath. "They planned for this. They knew we might come." Camille clenched her jaw. "Then we make sure they don't leave." With no time to lose, they veered off the trail, cutting through the densest part of the jungle. Branches whipped their faces, vines snagged at their arms, but they didn't stop. As they neared a clearing, the sound of rotor blades thundered in the distance. A sleek black helicopter sat waiting atop a makeshift helipad, its engines warming up. Standing nearby was the man from the footage, tall, dressed in tactical gear, speaking into a headset. Beside him were two more crates, smaller than before but reinforced, sealed tight. Camille's heart dropped. "More hybrids. Ready for transport," she whispered. They weren't done. They were just beginning. The man turned, cold eyes locking on the team, and raised his weapon. Before anyone could fire, Nyra leapt from the undergrowth like lightning. She crashed into the armed handler, knocking him to the ground with bone-crushing force. Rex followed, teeth sinking into the man's forearm, disarming him before he could scream. Blake rushed forward and kicked the weapon away. Mercer secured the crates, locking them down before they could be moved. Camille approached the helicopter, yelling to the pilot, "Shut it down! Now!" The man hesitated, but seeing Rex and Nyra, he quickly complied, raising his hands in surrender. The handler, pinned under Nyra's massive paw, looked up at Camille, blood staining his mouth. "You think this ends here?" he spat. "We already sold the research. There are more labs, more animals." Camille knelt beside him, unshaken. "Then we'll find them, and we'll shut every last one down." Nyra growled low, her face inches from his. He went silent, for the first time truly afraid. By nightfall, the site was secured. The authorities arrived by helicopter, the crates taken into custody, and the facility marked for dismantling. Camille stood beside Rex and Nyra, watching as the jungle reclaimed its silence. "We stopped it here," she said softly. "But this was only one piece." Rex nudged her hand. Nyra watched the horizon, calm yet alert. The fight had changed them all. And as the stars blinked to life above the canopy, Camille realized something deeper. The jungle had its guardians now. One born from training, one born from instinct. Together, they had become something extraordinary, something untouchable, the last line between nature and mankind's worst mistakes.